Friends, we can all see that many white bloggers have millions of followers. Please support me too, because my followers are still few. Black bloggers also deserve to be famous. My friends, let's unite and lift each other up. Please press subscribe button and like. In the bustling heart of Skyline City, a flight was about to take off that would change lives forever. Flight 2703 was a routine journey, but for 10-year-old Kian Hart, it was anything but ordinary. As he settled into his window seat, a silver tag dangling from his neck marked him as an unaccompanied minor. His father, Marcus Hart, a former military strategist, had prepared him well for this trip. Be polite, smile, and say please and thank you, he had advised. Kian was determined to follow those instructions. However, the atmosphere shifted when Clark Denham, a flight attendant with a reputation for being short-tempered, approached. Kian, with his innocent request for apple juice, unknowingly triggered a storm. "We're out," Clark snapped, his voice dripping with disdain. Kian, confused, pointed to the menu. "But it says there's some," he replied softly. The tension escalated. Clark's face darkened, and he leaned closer, his fists clenched. "Watch your tone," he growled, a threat hanging in the air. Kian, bewildered, insisted he hadn't been rude. But in that moment, Clark saw a disrespectful child who needed to be taught a lesson. What he didn't see was the man in Seat 1A, Judge Marcel Durham, quietly observing the unfolding drama. Before anyone could react, Clark's fist flew, striking Kian with brutal force. The cabin erupted into chaos. Gasps filled the air as Kian crumpled, blood trickling from his mouth. The judge's eyes widened in disbelief, and he rose from his seat, ready to intervene. "Call medical," he commanded, his voice steady amidst the turmoil. As paramedics rushed to the scene, the flight attendant's bravado began to crumble. Clark Denham, once confident, now stood frozen, realizing the gravity of his actions. The cabin was thick with shock, and passengers exchanged worried glances. The young flight attendant, Tim, stood paralyzed, unsure of how to respond. "Mr. Denham, you've just made a serious mistake," Judge Durham said, his voice calm but firm. The weight of authority hung in the air as Clark's bravado faded. He attempted to justify his actions, claiming Kian had disrespected him. But the judge wasn't buying it. "You struck a child," he stated, his tone unwavering. As the plane landed, the atmosphere shifted. Kian was whisked away on a stretcher, his small body fragile and broken. Marcus Hart, frantic with worry, arrived at the hospital, his heart pounding. He found his son in room 3B, bloodied and bruised. "Who did this to my boy?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Meanwhile, Clark Denham sat in a sterile security room, his confidence shattered. He insisted he had acted in self-defense, but the evidence was mounting against him. The video footage of the incident had gone viral, and public outrage was brewing. The narrative was shifting, and Clark was no longer the victim. As the trial approached, Marcus Hart transformed from a worried father into a relentless advocate for justice. He gathered evidence, testimonies, and a network of support. He discovered a pattern of abuse surrounding Clark Denham, a history of complaints buried by the airline. With each revelation, Marcus's resolve strengthened. On the day of the trial, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Kian, still healing, took the stand. His voice trembled but held a quiet strength. He said, "Let's see you talk now," he recounted, the words echoing in the hushed room. The impact of his testimony was palpable, and the jury listened intently. As the trial unfolded, the defense attempted to paint Clark as a victim of circumstance. But Marcus was prepared. He presented evidence of a culture of silence within the airline, a system that allowed abuse to flourish unchecked. The courtroom became a battleground for justice, and the stakes were high. At a surprising turn, Felix Ray, a former passenger who had faced Clark's wrath years earlier, stepped forward to testify. His account mirrored Kian's, revealing a disturbing pattern of behavior. The jury was captivated, and the tide began to turn. As the closing arguments were made, the prosecutor emphasized the need for accountability. "This case is not just about a punch, it's about a man entrusted with the care of the vulnerable," he declared. The jury deliberated, and when they returned, the verdict was clear: guilty on all charges. Clark Denham's world crumbled. He was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison, a consequence of his actions that would reverberate far beyond the courtroom. The media frenzy that followed highlighted the systemic issues within the airline industry, and Marcus Hart became a voice for change. Months later, as the dust settled, a new initiative was born, the Kian Hart Initiative for Protected Passages. Marcus dedicated himself to ensuring that no child would ever feel unsafe while flying again. The lounge at Skyland Airport, named in Kian's honor, became a sanctuary for unaccompanied minors, a place where they could feel secure. Kian, now a symbol of resilience, stood beside his father at the opening ceremony. "I was hurt on a plane," he began, his voice steady. "But I am not just a victim. I'm still flying." The applause that followed was a testament to the power of courage and the importance of speaking up. As they walked through the lounge, Kian felt a sense of peace. The shadows of the past no longer haunted him. He had found his voice, and with it, he had sparked a movement for change. Together, he and his father had turned a moment of violence into a catalyst for justice, ensuring that the skies would be safer for all children. But just as the celebration began, a shadow loomed over the lounge. A group of airline executives, their faces tight with concern, entered the space. They had heard whispers of the initiative and the growing movement for accountability. One of them, a tall man with a sharp suit, stepped forward. "Mr. Hart," he began, his voice smooth but laced with tension, "we need to talk about the implications of your actions." Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had anticipated this moment, but the weight of their presence was palpable. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice steady. The executive continued, "Your initiative is gaining traction, and it's causing unrest within our ranks. We need to ensure that this doesn't spiral out of control." Kian, sensing the tension, looked up at his father, confusion in his eyes. Marcus knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, buddy. We're just having a conversation." But the executive wasn't finished. "We're willing to negotiate, Mr. Hart. We can offer you a settlement to keep this quiet. Think of your son's future." Marcus's heart raced. He knew this was a pivotal moment. The offer was tempting, but it came with strings attached. "You think I'd sell out my son's story for a payout?" he replied, his voice rising. "This isn't just about money. It's about justice." The executive's expression hardened. "Justice? Or revenge? You're playing a dangerous game, and it could cost you more than you realize." As the tension in the room thickened, Kian's small voice broke through. "Dad, what's happening?" Marcus took a deep breath, looking into his son's eyes. "They want to silence us, Kian. But we won't back down. We're fighting for what's right." The executive smirked, sensing the cracks in their resolve. "You may think you're on the right side of history, but the truth is, power has a way of silencing those who challenge it. You're just a father and a boy against a corporation." Marcus stood tall, determination flooding his veins. "We're not just a father and son. We're a movement, and we won't be silenced." The executive's smile faded, replaced by a cold glare. "Then prepare for the consequences." As they left the lounge, Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. This was just the beginning. The fight for justice was far from over, and he was ready to face whatever came next. But little did they know, the real battle was about to unfold, and it would test their resolve in ways they could never have imagined. Do you want to know the fate of the heroes? Please post part 2. Subscribe to the channel and continue watching. Your opinion and support are important to me. Leave it in the comments. Thank you.